To get started making your origami lucky stars, you need some paper that is either normal simple print paper from your printer or some really light card, something that's easy to bend, isn't very rigid, but not anything too flimsy like thin magazine paper. What you need to do is all stars are made from fundamentally a strip of paper. So your strip needs to be a minimum, no matter what size star you're making, of about 20 centimeters, unless you're making a teeny one. Small stars are easier to make, they're easier to pop and form the shape and look neater, whereas larger stars, this is probably the largest you can go, are easier on the hands because you're not fiddling with something really small, but they can collapse easier. So there are pros and cons to each, and also this isn't the smallest type you can make. You could make ones half of the size of that if you are really good with your hands and very tiny things and have some good sharp fingernails. So I'm going to start by showing you a larger one just for ease of demonstration, and I'm going to use just normal printer paper. Right, so I've got my strip which is 2 centimeters wide and the full length of an A4 piece of printer paper. I need to do a knot, so an over and under loop knot on the one side of the strip. I'm going to do that again to show you. Go over, make a loop, and put the short piece through the loop and pull gently. You want to keep this little knot that we're creating very close to the short end and the long end free. I'll do it one more time. Over and through the loop. Okay. Now I want to get this very robust, rotund little knot tightened to the point that we can get a pentagon shape. So keeping this little tail very short, don't let it get longer. Start wiggling that paper through to tighten this knot without bending, piercing, folding the paper, not yet. Okay. So it takes a bit of patience, a little bit of wiggling, a little bit of coaxing, but with a little bit of practice this gets easier and easier. Right, so I've got it quite close. It started to flatten a bit, and it gets to the point where I'm not quite ready to fold, but I'm close. I'm going to start sort of bending the paper gently. Don't make a full crease, but just start to help it flatten along. Be careful not to pinch it at any point. Once you're feeling like you're getting quite close, then you can start to fold down the edges one by one. So I think I'm quite close. I don't want my tail to get any shorter, so I'm just going to do a bit of a correction there. Right, so I'm going to fold this one down. I'm going to feed that in. I have overshot that a bit. So take a little bit of time to do this. It'll get better with practice until you have a nice pentagon shape that you can flatten on all of those 3 folded sides. Keep pulling it tighter. You don't want it to be cut in anywhere or looser or wider on one of those sides. You want it to be a nice balanced shape. So I'm quite happy with that one. So I can now go and just reinforce those 3 folds that I've made with my fingernail and my fingertips. And what I've now got is I've got the perfect pentagon shape that with a tail running off of it. I am going to add some extra lines here to just show you where the ribbons are going over, so it's easier to see on the camera. You can see those ones quite clearly. Right, so we've got this little tail which we need to get rid of because we want to start on the full pentagon. So we want to fold from that point. Now, I can fold this in to get rid of it. If it's too long, it might need some cutting. If it's too short, it might not fold in. So the first thing you can do, it goes against origami principles, is you can simply use your scissors and cut along that straight line, not the Y line, but the straight line on the other side. If you want to stick with traditional origami principles, we need to fold it and tuck it into this Y shape. Not this side, but this side. So all you do is you're going to fold it along that line towards the Y, and then you're going to tuck it under the two sides of that Y. You want to get it right into the Y there. Little bit fiddly. If this is a very annoying stage for anyone, skip it, cut it out. We're not here to make things difficult for anyone. Right, so I've tucked it in. You can cut yours completely fine. Right, tucked it in. So I'm going to start wrapping this ribbon all the way around the pentagon, and because of how a pentagon is shaped, it will align it so that every time we're wrapping around, it's going around it perfectly to reinforce it. So before you start wrapping it, look at both sides. We don't want to start on the Y side that faces the tail. We want to start on the straight line that faces the tail. So not this side, but this side. And we're going to fold towards yourself along that line firmly, and you'll see that as you pull it over, it then lines up perfectly with one of the sides. Once you've got it there, reinforce that fold nicely with your thumbs, fingernails. Okay, you folded that, flip it over. Again, you've got your straight line. Fold it over that one. You'll notice that it runs then along another side of the pentagon. Fold it, reinforce it, flip it over, wrap it over, fold, reinforce the fold, check that it's running along that side flush, flip it over, fold against the side, it'll run along the side next to it, reinforce the fold, flip it over, fold it again. Keep your folding tight. You want to keep it flat. It's a very flat pentagon at this stage, so wrap tightly, not too tightly that you ever bend it, but really a good tight neat wrap where it's running along all the sides perfectly. So I've got one more fold left, so I'm going to go over this side because I've run out of ribbon. And at this stage I now have this little tail end to go, so we want to get rid of that tail end. So my star is going to not be very neat because I'm going to add some lines to it, but this is to show you where we've landed up. We've landed up with a strip of paper and another Y shape, and what we can do is we can insert this little tail and slide it into that Y shape. It's a bit too long to do that, so I'm just going to trim it to about half the length of the pentagon. If yours is already that length, that's perfect. If it's shorter, if it's too short, you might have to actually go back to tuck it in a previous one. Right, so I'm going to now sneak it into that Y on both sides. So I've got on the left there, and then on the bottom and on the top. It is fiddly. It might be really irritating. Sometimes it drives me a bit nuts. I'm going to make it a bit easier for myself by cutting the corner off. But this stage we have to do, and we have to do it properly. Right, so I have folded that in. Right, once it's in, it's easy. You just ease it in and just nudge it until you can fold along that edge really tightly. So you have got a perfect pentagon shape. And this is going to be the base. So this star was made with the same. And basically, this flattened pentagon pops out when you apply pressure onto the sides with a sharp object, and it pops out to become a three-dimensional star. So how we do that is we're just going to have a look at where these lines are, where the paper's overrunning. So it's a bit hard to see on the white, so that's why I'm drawing them on. Okay, so that's what it looks like on each side. Now, you just want to choose a side where you're going to start your indentation, but you don't want to start it on any of these small triangles. You want to start it on where you've got a free ribbon leading to a free ribbon. So there to there is a good spot. So I'm going to start there, and I'm going to make an indent at the very center. Don't draw these lines yourselves. This is me just showing you what to do. So I'm going to also look there. Where's the center? There. Where's the center? Center and the very center of that one. So we're simply going to take a fingernail or a sharp edged object like the edge of your ruler or some firm cardboard, and you're going to push in these 5 points, and it's going to open up. So it's currently closed, your pentagon, and as you apply that pressure, it's going to start to open, open, open until it pops out like that. I must warn you at this stage, you can have a collapsed star. It's going to happen to you. Be prepared for it. So I've brought a collapsed star to show you. A collapsed star is when something goes wrong and a little hole forms, or when you're trying to pop it out, it sort of all starts popping upright and having an indented star, which is not right either. So you'll either have a collapsed star or that one where you have a big hole in it. So I've had to abandon that. You may have to do the same if you have a bad one. So be prepared for them. They happen. It's sometimes just cruddy luck. They will happen to you, but once you get more into the swing of it, you will have less of them. So I always have a bit of nervousness when I'm teaching a class because I don't want them to collapse when I've done all that effort, but sometimes it happens. So I know I want to start on this one because it's the one that has the straight ribbon connecting onto both sides of it, there to there. So I'm going to position that towards myself. I'm using my fingernail because I've got fingernails. If you don't, you can use the edge of a ruler, which you will hold upright. I'm going to then hold it gently. I'm right-handed, so if you're left-handed, you'll use it the other way around. And I'm going to apply gentle pressure with all these 4 fingers. Okay. I'm then going to position my fingernail facing upwards into that point and applying gentle pressure. Just before you do that, just check everything's flat. Make sure nothing, it's not bowed or bucked anywhere. Okay, I'm going to get it back into position, hold it upright towards yourself, and then take your nail and gently, applying pressure on all 4 sides, start pushing in. Go slowly, don't rush it. You'll feel it opening up. If you feel it collapsing, as in the bottom is caving up or the top is caving in, it's not right. This one's going okay. It started to open up. I'm going to rotate it and then put my fingernail into the next one. Oh, I've got a little bit of a collapsed bit here. Let's see if we can correct it. We might not. There we go. It's sort of come right. Rotate, apply pressure. Rotate, apply pressure. And it has popped out. So it's not perfect at this stage. Obviously it's got my scribble marks on it. But now you can do some finessing of it. So you want to have some nice sharp points going into the center. So I can see that with my fingernail I didn't do this one very well. So I'm just going to go and nudge that one in a bit more. Same with this one. You want it to come to a sharp point. So you want 5 nice little points from there. Check the other side. Use your fingernail and nudge them in a bit more. So that one's a round one. I want a sharp edge. That's a round one. I want a sharper edge. Same with this one. Right, I'm happy with those inner indents, and now just pinching the corners, I sharpen the edge of my stars. And that's just flattening the edges and just making the shape much better. So when I first popped it, it didn't look amazing, did it? But now, just with a little bit of tweaking and finessing, which you can still keep doing, I can see there's a bit I don't quite like here, you can just keep making it better. So mine's a bit ugly because it's got all these marks on it and my hands are covered in ink, but that is how you make the star. So essentially we had a flat pentagon which, holding carefully, we pushed in to help it open up like a balloon, and we have got our little star here. So that is how you make Japanese origami lucky stars, and yours will hopefully not have all these lines and scribbles on it and rather look nice and neat like these little two. And like I said, they've got lots of little uses. I have done a 2 centimeter by the length of an A4 page. I will do another one with a shorter one and a smaller one to show you another example. Right, so this length is 20 centimeters or a little bit more. You don't ever want to have a length less than 20 unless you are doing micro tiny stars. And I've done a width of, this one is about 1.6 or 7 centimeters. There's no true science to these dimensions. As long as you have a fair length of ribbon, it's not too wide, the ratio of width to length, it must be quite narrow, so that you can get a good few wraps around that pentagon. If you don't get the wraps in, you won't get the structure to support it when you pop it open. If you have too many wraps around it, it'll be too hard for it to pop open. So if you looked online, they might say you can find templates and things. You don't need to. I always work like this, and it's always worked for me. So for this one, I am using a light card, so that means I'm going to have to apply a little bit more pressure when I do the end part, so it's a little bit more robust. I'm going to start with my loop. On the one side. Made my knot, and I'm starting to flatten it and eke it in. So keep feeding it, try not to compromise the paper while you're doing this. Alright, and keep your little tail really short on the one side. Okay, I'm getting to a point where I'm starting to create some bends. I'm not folding yet, but I'm very close. So once I'm at that stage, I can just start to tease it through a little bit more to get that tight, as tight a pentagon as I can. Right, I think I'm there. So I'm going to just flatten all of those 3 sides. Because it's card, I'm going to apply a little bit more force to get those folds in. And I've got my tail here, which I am then going to fold in to the little Y knot onto the back end where the straight line is, but into this little Y shape. So I'm going to fold it along the line from the other side, and I'm going to sneak it in there. It is fiddly, it is not fun this stage. If you are fed up with it, simply cut it off. My tail's actually a little bit short, it might not tuck very well, which means I might end up cutting it anyway. No, I've got it in. Right, so I've snuck it in there, get it in nice and tight, and then reinforce that fold. So I've got my pentagon with its tail, and now I'm going to do the wrapping. I look on the 2 sides which way I'm going to wrap. I'm not wrapping towards the Y, I'm wrapping towards the straight line because I'm using that line to guide my fold. So I'm going to fold it up over that line, and when you do that, fold it tightly, you will see that it will run perfectly along the next side next to it. So check that that's all lined up, reinforce your fold. Turn it over, same thing, fold up against that fold. Pull it tight, line it up on that edge, turn it over, reinforce the fold, and this is probably my last fold, turn it over, and there I am. Right, so that has taken me around, and I need to tuck this in now. It's overshot the pentagon, so I'm just going to shorten it to about half the length of the pentagon, and I'm going to sneak it in. I don't have a perfect Y to sneak it in, but I'm going to just go under wherever I can to get it perfectly hidden in there. So I've got my pentagon, and it's ready to start doing the indentations. So I'm just going to check that it's nice and flat, it's not bent or bowed anywhere, reinforce those little folds, and then I'm going to look for the side where I'm going to put my fingernail in first. So I want the straight ribbon and where it becomes a straight ribbon on the other side. So this side is the one that I want to do my first indentation in, this edge. So I face that towards me. Support the pentagon shape gently with your 4 other fingers. I'm going to move these stars so it focuses on my hands. And then applying gentle pressure on all 4 sides. Take your fingernail, put it in the center, and apply pressure towards it. It's shaking a bit because this star is a little bit firm. That's not working too well. I'm going to turn it over. Just flattened again. Let's see if I have better luck this way around. Apply pressure. There we go. Now I can feel that it's working. Okay. Rotate. Apply pressure. Rotate. Apply pressure. Oh, it might be concaving. No, it's not concaving. But it's not the happiest. There we go. Got that one up. And this side. And I can see I've got a little collapse bit here. It's not the end of the world, these kind of collapses. But I do have a sharp instrument, so I'm just going to lift this up and see if I can maybe get that piece to fold up. So I'm just going to flatten it again, see if I can get it to go the other way and pop up right. There we go, that's almost been salvaged. So it is retrievable sometimes, not often. So I got a messy star, but that's normal. They always look messy in the first place. The only bit I'm worried about is this bit slightly collapsed, but I seem to have recovered it. So I am going to, firstly you can reinforce the central anchor bits with your sharp edge. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to take my fingernail and I'm going to, working on both sides, I'm just going to get it a nice sharp crease at the points where I want it. Not too deep in. Just proper like star shape. Turn it over. Do the same on the other side. And then, using your forefinger and thumb, pinch in your star points. Don't pinch too much or else they become a bit flattened. But just till it starts looking nice. So I can see it's starting to take a much better shape now. Again, if you see one of the sharp points is gone, add it in there. But I now have a much better looking star from where it started, and it was about to collapse and it actually didn't. So we can see that point. It's not perfect, but this is good enough. If you have a whole pile of these together, nobody's going to look at that and think there's anything wrong with it. So that is how you make Japanese lucky star origami stars. Right, I think I've covered all of it. I don't think I'll do another demo. For people who struggle with fine motor coordination or really small fiddly things, unfortunately the best one you can do is the full length of an A4 sheet with 2 centimeters. I did try and find if we could do one with a bigger width. Unfortunately, if you did that, you need a longer piece of paper, and unless you've got A3 paper, not A3 card, in your possession, that's going to be really tricky. I haven't tried gluing them together, but you could try that if you wanted to. So get a length that's longer than A4 length, add on a good 10 centimeters, and you can probably work with 2.5 centimeters. See how you go, but the gluing needs to be a very small margin. You don't want to make it too thick on any point because that'll interfere with the collapse and the popping. But you can give that a go. Generally, these are the typical sizes that you work with when you make these origami stars. So that was 2 centimeters on A4 length. This one was, I think, about a centimeter and a half. And you can make teeny tiny ones. I might make one for the next class just to show you. You can get really tiny ones, and they're actually quite, if you're alright with very small things, they're actually quite easy to do because they pop really nicely.